So we'll start with our peace prayer. By now everybody knows it. You can join in if you like, as a prayerful teacher and student. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditam Mastoma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. May that one protect us both. May that one nourish us both. May we work together with great energy. May our study be illumined. May we not unnecessarily careful with each other. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. As usual, I'll mute my microphone so you can formulate some questions.
It's sort of a creative question, I guess. I've heard
to give a creative answer.
I've heard sometimes that people say, like, let's say a director that creates this amazing world, imagination and creatures and things like that. And I just wondered, is that possibly already in existence? Like what we imagine, could that already, you know what I mean? Could that be from another realm? They say if you can imagine it, then it sort of already exists in a way. I just have a friend who's created these amazing digital kind of characters, and it's so like a different world, and and I just wonder, like, where did that come from for her to draw these sort of futuristic amazing beings with such detail, if that makes sense.
Okay. So there's one principle that we really know of. Nothing comes from outside. Everything comes from inside. That's the first fundamental axiom we have to accept. And so that means that education, for example, is simply tapping into the knowledge you already have. And behind that really would be the idea that whatever is now is just an unfolding of whatever was. In other words, for example, a tree does not exist without a seed. But inside the seed will be the whole tree, not yet formed, no doubt. In its potentialities there, it unfolds as a tree. We can use the word evolve. It evolves as a tree. And evolution requires changes. So when we talk about creator and creation, as we do, we're using convenience terms. Because you see, there's something called relativity of perception. Things look different from different points of view. And that means that we have no business to contradict any position. We can supplement every position. So in other words, if somebody says there's a creator or a creator God, we say yes, but there's more. And so when you take a philosophy of plus plus, because you see, if you say you know something, the implication is that there's something much more to know beyond it. If you take a blackboard or a whiteboard, in the old days you had a blackboard, you put a small chalk mark in the center, two things you'll notice. You'll notice the chalk mark and the blackboard beyond it. And when you notice the blackboard, you'll notice the room beyond it. And so it goes on ad infinitum. And that is why in the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, Patanjali, really, the yoga philosophy defines Ishvara not as a creator, but as a supreme teacher. In other words, one who has all the infinite knowledge, that datum, on which you can't go. So we have tremendous potential. I often think that our motto here should be infinite possibilities. If you take, for example, the complex structure of the deoxyribonucleic acid in the nucleus of a cell, take one small hair like this from your cheek, not normally visible, cut it into 1,000 pieces, take one, put it under an electron microscope, and then you see the internal structure of the nucleus, and this is deoxyribonucleic acid. And we know its genetic structure, and we know its codings, and we know its combinations and its possible combinations. And the combinations are infinite. And we maybe have over 100,000 coded messages within it, and we're only using a few. You see, it's a bit like next door, they're doing yoga exercise. What I say to people doing yoga exercise, please stretch your arms. Now stretch them more. Because every time you stretch them more, you realize, oh, I was doing a minimum. My minimum was my maximum. So stretch a little bit more and you'll get it. So what is the source of all our creativity and all our full potential? It is really what we can call cosmic mind. The original creative mind, which is there, echoes within us, and it's responsible for the unfolding and the inherent intelligence in everything. And where does that come from? Well, behind that really is what is described, not as anything with qualities, but something which exists, its existence itself. It's described as Sat-Chit Ananda, existence itself, consciousness itself, and bliss itself. Taittiriya Upanishad says Ananta, infinite. So it's natural that we will find expressions of that, signatures of that in the world around us. If we didn't find signatures like that in the world around us, then we would have no reason to believe that there was a source whose echo we find given time and space and causation and function. So it came to me. That's an expression we hear from the mouths of geniuses, as if it comes from outside. When we look at it properly, we'll see, no, it's all coming from inside. It's the internal expression coming out. So what the yogi wants to do is, the yogi wants to manifest this potential from within. That is why Swami Vivekananda, this is often quoted, because there's no greater summary, really, of the whole thing than what Swami Vivekananda quotes in his Raja Yoga. Each soul is potentially divine. The goal is to manifest this from within. Let's not underrate the statement. What does it mean to be divine? You see, each soul is potentially infinite, potentially creative, and it is manifesting this from within. So all of this revelation that occurs in spiritual life is really just an unfolding what already is there. We know this from biology, how a single zygote can then diversify into trillions and trillions of cells with different functions. What is the miracle behind it? And modern science, modern biological science are still scratching their heads over it. They really don't know. We know. It's there in the first place. There's no surprise. So it is the example I always give where you take a piece of paper and you fold it like that. One piece of paper folded. You unfold it. You don't get anything new. It's the same piece of paper. It's a sum totality. It looks like change. It looks like evolution, but it's not. It's made to look like that. That's part of the game. We classify it as Maya. We are tempted to source it from outside and then speculate. Maybe aliens came and invaded us. I don't know. Many kinds of theories. But it's all coming from inside. That's why we call it revelation or realization. What already is there, you're realizing. So the example I normally give would be, supposing a king, or let's say King Charles is visiting Ireland, and so ahead of it, all the flags are put, and then all the graffiti is washed in the city, and all the streets are washed and cleaned, and everything is decorated nicely. All the heroin addicts are hidden in a corner somewhere. So a person goes into a city and sees all flags flying, everything is nice and clean, but he doesn't know anything. So the question is, has the king come already, or is the king going to come tomorrow? You see, if the king comes, you don't then put the graffiti back and untidy the streets and put the heroin addicts back. You keep it there. So the point is, peeping out of the window, when is the king coming? When is realization coming? When will the truth be revealed to me? Assuming it's coming in a period of time and space outside you, you see, that's not the case. That's a good starting point to set up an expectation like that. But soon you realize it's not going anywhere. What you're looking for is already in you. I hope that makes sense to you.
Yeah, thanks, Swami.
Swami, I have a question.
Wonderful.
Could you explain the difference between realization and liberation?
Yes, okay. I can. Next question. Okay. So let's say you wake up one morning and all the curtains are drawn and you have no idea that it's daylight. And supposing you slept a little longer and the sun has already risen and the heat is penetrating the windows, but you have no understanding of it because all your curtains are closed and the room is put into darkness. Now, when you open the curtains, that's called a realization of the fact of what is already there. You didn't have to invent a scene. You didn't have to invent the sunshine. You didn't have to invent the rays. It was a discovery. So a realization, a discovery with an aha moment. That's what makes a difference between discovery and realization in any field. But when we talk about realization of yourself in depth, your own true nature, when that realization dawns, it could dawn as a series of partial revelations or realizations. Realization is the same thing. When you're accustomed to it, when it's no longer a surprise, this is called freedom. When it becomes habitual. What is freedom when you play a musical instrument? You start off with an inhibition. If you have the persistence enough and the fact of it, the factuality of what you're doing, you'll see it's not going to be today or tomorrow that you master an instrument. So, all right, there's a certain fear. Maybe I can't do it. Maybe I can't persevere. And after a few attempts, you may be tempted to give up. Because in your head, you think, oh, okay, you can do this easily. You just put your fingers all over the place and magically it'll happen. No. So it requires practice. And then as you practice more and more, it becomes easier. As it becomes easier, you develop more faith in yourself and your abilities. And ultimately, you'll get freedom, which means after, let's say, several years, even with eyes closed, you can play whatever tune you like or decide not to play at all. That's freedom. Freedom means I can play if I want, and I play it with great skill. And I play it in an easy, natural way, an habitual way. I have habitual freedom. And I'm also free not to do it. If I look at the stars through a telescope, I'm free to look at the instrument of the telescope and see the stars. Now, if I think that that's the only view, that's not freedom. But if I think, okay, not only can I look through the telescope at the stars, I can look at the telescope itself. Telescope representing the mind. And that means I'm not the telescope. And then I have the freedom to look away from the telescope as well. So this is true freedom. When we say freedom, it's accompanied by freedom from any restriction that comprises fear. Freedom from fear is freedom from pain. So this realization of the self need not necessarily be a freedom. Only when it is habitual will it be truly freedom. That would be the significant difference. I hope I answered your question.
Yes, thank you so much.
You see, we have to, our difficulty is developing a new habit. All of our habit lies in the unconscious mind. And the unconscious mind we can easily simply call habit level. It's just a series of behaviors repeated so that it becomes second nature. But then it becomes first nature also. So we have to, by careful discipline and spiritual practice, we have to develop a new habit, not squash the old one. We don't seek a fight about the old things. The old things that come up into the mind, they come if you like, stay if you can, go if you must. Some new friends are there. Bring in the new friends, truth, beauty, goodness, love, harmony, put that in. Until that becomes a natural condition of the mind. And the unconscious mind has a suction power. It has a pulling power. It pulls things toward you. So going back to the original question that was there, it is the unconscious that has a pulling power. It acts like a magnet. It sucks in all the components of all the scenes in front of you, making you the creator of your own future and your own destiny. Now, there's a common materialistic idea to say that everything is predetermined because everything is obeying the law of causality, and therefore it is all destined. Supposing you have a choice of two types of food and you choose the one, according to them, you were already destined. You had no choice. It was going to happen that way. The problem is those people think that there is no free will apart from their own free will to make these determinations and these philosophical axioms. Therein lies the problem. And certainly freedom and will, these two things don't go together. They're paradoxically antithetical toward each other, because true freedom doesn't have any restriction. When you make a choice, supposing you will to move a chair from A to B, well, a pre-existing chair must be there in order to make the choice. And a limited selection must be there for you to evaluate and make the choice about. So that's the difficulty. Now we know at the fundamental level, we're not talking about free will. We're not talking about determinism. We're talking about indeterminism. We're talking about possibilities. We're talking about, probabilities. We're talking about Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. We're talking about uncertainties. So at the fundamental level and the level that we see, there are contradictions in terms, which makes two sets of physics, by the way.